During the reign of King Jaehaerys Targaryen, young Aerea Targaryen, who had grown tired of her life on Dragonstone, stole Balerion the Black Dread and flew off from the island. The royal family was optimistic that they would find her soon. No dragon, especially one such as Balerion, who was the largest living dragon, could remain unnoticed for long. And yet, an entire year passed and they heard nothing. Why she had chosen Balerion, such an ancient and powerful dragon, may forever remain a mystery. But Aerea Targaryen and Balerion did eventually show up again. Nearly a year later, Aerea landed in King's Landing, clinging to the huge dragon. Balerion had suffered wounds, including a 9-foot gash down his left side, which still dripped with blood. But worse was what had become of Aerea Targaryen herself. She was unnaturally hot. Her flesh was burning and her skin was red. She is described in Fire and Blood as being so hot that it was as if she had been thrust into a pot of boiling oil. She looks as though all the flesh had been burned out of her. It is said that she begged for death many times, as the creatures wriggled inside her body, swelling her skin up and down. Eventually, Aerea's flesh grew darker and began to crack like cooking pork, as tendrils of smoke seeped from her mouth and nose. Eventually, even her eyes burst open from the heat, and still there was more. Finally, when Aerea was lowered into a tub filled with ice, the shock of the cold stopped her heart, and at last, the things that had been living inside her came out. The things, Mother have mercy. I do not know how to speak of them. They were worms with faces, snakes with hands, twisting, slimy, unspeakable things that seemed to writhe and pulse and squirm as they came bursting from her flesh. Some were no bigger than my little finger, but at least one was as long as my arm. Oh, warrior, protect me. The sounds they made. The creatures, who Septon Barth describes as being creatures of heat and fire, died when they came into contact with the cold water, writhing as they perished. It is noted that this incident inspired Barth to write Dragons, Worms, and Wyverns, Their Unnatural History. Fire and Blood also implies that Aerea Targaryen likely would not have been able to control a dragon as ancient as Balerion. In the A Song of Ice and Fire main series, it is said that Drogon is Balerion come again, and Daenerys has very little control over where he flies her. It would only make sense that Balerion the Black Dread would fly where he pleases, regardless of what Aerea Targaryen wished. It is likely that she had intended to come to King's Landing all along, but Balerion instead took her back to his home. Balerion was the only living dragon that was born in Valyria. The scars he suffered suggest that he faced a monstrous foe. It is also interesting that the book Dragons, Worms, and Wyverns is mentioned directly. George R. R. Martin is drawing our attention purposely. In A Feast for Crows, it is mentioned that worms roamed in the 14 fires of Valyria. These worms, like dragons, breathed fire, and often the blackened bodies of slaves were discovered deep within the Valyrian mine shafts. In A Feast for Crows, the kindly man actually tells Arya Stark that according to the old tales, these worms existed even before the dragons did. It is said that the young worms would be no larger than the smallest part of a child's arm, but they could grow to incredible size and could tunnel through rocks. It would be foolish of us not to consider the possibility that the worms found inside Aerea Targaryen could in some way be related to the ones mentioned to roam in the 14 fires. And all of this would also support the suggestion that Balerion flew Aerea to Valyria. This might also potentially explain Balerion's wounds. Only a creature of immense size and immense power could have inflicted that kind of damage. It is not an easy thing to cut through dragon scales. It would have likely taken another dragon to do so, or perhaps a fireworm of immense size. As for the creatures found inside of Aerea Targaryen, I don't think it's a stretch to say that they were likely some proto-form of the other described worms. Perhaps, before the worms could live on their own, an incubation period of sorts was required. This type of behavior is seen in the real world. Once the host is used up, the parasites are released and they continue their life cycle. It is possible that what Septon Barth witnessed happening to Aerea was merely the beginning phase of the fireworm life cycle. Considering the fact that according to the Kindly Man, the fireworms of Old Valyria start off small, and considering that the worms inside of Aerea Targaryen are creatures of heat and fire, along with the suggestion that Aerea Targaryen had been to Valyria, it seems most likely that the fireworms we've heard of previously and the ones described in Fire and Blood are one and the same, or at least some mutated or altered form of them. Since the worms described in Fire and Blood have hands and faces, it begs the question of whether or not the Valyrians were involved in their creation. In the very chapter that details the demise of Aerea Targaryen, this is stated: the Valyrians were more than dragon lords. They practiced blood magic and other dark arts as well, delving deep into the earth for secrets best left buried, and twisting the flesh of beast and men to fashion monstrous and unnatural chimeras. If you don't know, in biology, the word chimera refers to an organism containing a mixture of genetically different tissues. Aerea Targaryen may have accidentally stumbled onto some ancient Valyrian experiment. Who knows what would have happened if she had not been dunked into the cold water and the creatures killed? It may be possible that an epidemic was narrowly avoided. Septon Barth states at the end of his account that there are some doors meant to be left unopened by the hands of men, and Aerea Targaryen had gone through such a door. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. I would like to take this time to thank some of my wonderful patrons: Trini Girl, Cher Valentine, Claudia Young, Dominique Maldonado, Zoe Zhang, Mara Chris, Ivan Slaughter, Robin Laundry, The Ghost of Raymond Redbeard, Joel Iverson, Sean Lorenzen. If you would like to support this channel, check out my Patreon, link in the description.